we're working on some new product development that could improve storage. It's, for example, -80 versus -196. So I think the developers are aware of the need to be ready for that large scale and that logistics complication. I think, unfortunately, it's still late in the cycle when people start thinking about that.
Thank you to the International Society for Cell and Gene Therapy for supporting Onyx Live.
I am Federico Cittrich reporting for Onyx Live here in Dublin at the ISCT. Today we are joined by Werner, CTO at BioLife Solutions. Sean, thank you very much.
Thank you. Good to be here. I'm currently in the role of CTO for BioLife Solutions, responsible for product development. I came to BioLife a few years ago with an acquisition that they made of the Sexton Biotechnologies, where I was president. BioLife has been a long-running partner in the cell therapy industry, really with cryopreservation media that's important for storing and preserving most of the cells that are, shipped around the world for cell therapy applications.
Sean, BioLife sits in a portion of the CGT ecosystem that patients rarely see. So how does and how much can preservation actually play a role in the final product?
Yeah, so quite a bit. Most of the products that are approved on the market are frozen as they're delivered to the patient. And so making sure that those cells perform the same way they do after thaw as they did before you froze them down is critically important. And so with the fact that most of those therapies are frozen or cryopreserved, it's really given us an opportunity to be a partner in this industry and really play an important role in bringing these therapies to patients.
One of the big topics in the field is, of course, the evolution from autologous-to-allogeneic therapies. I wanted your opinion on how, if that actually happens and when that actually happens, how preservation changes with that.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because I think obviously the idea of an allogeneic therapy is that it's a lot shorter cycle. It's ready to go. Maybe you can store it either on site or at distribution centers closer to the patient, but it's still likely going to be cryopreserved. There could be different temperature paradigms. We're working on some new product development that could improve storage. It's, for example, -80 versus -196. And so we think with the allo products, you're still going to end up with a need to preserve cells.
And as the CGT field moves towards also larger populations and larger patient populations, do you think there's something that the industry still underestimates about cold chain and biopreservation?
I'm not so sure they underestimate it anymore. COVID was a big eye-opener for everybody in terms of thinking about how do you actually do real cold chain logistics with large patient populations. So I think the folks that have had that experience can really provide a lot of benefits and knowledge to our little tiny industry compared to what we had to do before. So I think the developers are aware of the need to be ready for that large scale and that logistics complication. But I think we'll be ready to turn on as an industry when we get there.
Last year, BioLife acquired Cryo Solutions to add new cryopreservation technology to the portfolio. I wanted to ask you, what problem does that aim to solve that traditional cryopreservation approaches still struggle with?
Yeah, so it was a really unique and interesting technology. So what that technology does is when you freeze cells, there's a thermodynamic phenomenon in frozen water where as you go through at warmer temperatures, the ice crystals will reform and actually grow. And so recrystallization inhibition blocks that process. So you might find when you freeze the cells, everything's fine. But over time, if you don't keep them at that low temperature, you can get more damage that happens to the cells. This technology specifically inhibits that thermodynamic process. So the benefits that can come out of that are things like potentially reduced cryopreservation agents. So for example, reduced DMSO concentration or much more stability at higher frozen temperatures. So that's where the idea is around trying to improve storage and stability at -80 or maybe even shipping on ice as opposed to liquid nitrogen temperatures. So those are the elements that we're working towards as we kind of turn this into a product and bring it to the market.
Sean, also from your experience, do you think or do you feel that in conferences like this, like ISCT, people or the field are paying enough attention, or also how has that developed about how people think about what happens after manufacturing?
I think unfortunately it's still late in the cycle when people start thinking about that. So, obviously these ideas, these therapies come from novel scientific biology concepts, right? And so people have an idea about a target, or how do we want to attach this, or maybe we'll do bispecific targeting, or all of those pieces. And then, you start in a research lab, you can do anything you want to make a cell do what you want. And then everybody starts thinking about scale and manufacturing. So you got to think about those manufacturing processes. And often it's only sort of an afterthought when they realize, wait, we need the same level of control on broad shipping and distribution. So everybody goes through it. Everybody has to end up with really robust validation practices on their logistics at the end. But a lot of times it can be a delay because they didn't do that upstream and earlier in the process.
Well, Sean, thank you very much for joining us, for your insight and for your time.
Yeah, absolutely. It was fun.